ashamed at all? Look at her face. Are you ashamed? No, look. Everyone look at her face. Why did you bring your children here?
Just absolutely vile, repugnant, and disgusting behavior. This was immediately after Kamala Harris's rally last night in Houston, Texas. Tempers were already high because people expected Beyonce to perform and she didn't. There were hecklers all throughout the night. Now, we don't quite know the context of what happened here. We don't know whether or not this was a Trump supporter and that's why this verbal altercation happened, or whether he attended the rally or was just a bystander. But quite frankly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the context is, because if two adults are having a confrontation, they should sort it out themselves. You don't involve a child, an innocent child, a bystander in this, especially one who is young enough to be in a stroller. That is just unacceptable behavior and something that shouldn't be tolerated in a civilized society. Now, unfortunately, this sort of behavior isn't surprising coming from someone in the Democrat Party, especially after a Harris rally. Because keep in mind, the Democrats and the Harris campaign have made abortion a key pinnacle, a key cornerstone of their political agenda. So when you're promoting abortion, when you're literally promoting the killing of unborn children, that's what you're doing. You are fostering an environment where this sort of behavior is acceptable to your corner of the world, and it is a shame. Now, kudos where kudos is due. There was a lady here you can see in the black t-shirt. When she realizes what's going on, she steps in and she tells that lady, I'm not a professional lip reader, but it looks like she's saying, no, you don't do that. We're not going to do that. So I will say kudos to her for stepping in, but I am a little disappointed in the rest of the crowd. If you watch the video at the very beginning again, you'll notice in the audio there's laughing, there's scoffing. It seems like most of the bystanders are not getting involved, which, maybe they're doing it for their safety. But again, it is just a shame that the culture of the current Democrat Party is, that they're not going to do anything to stop that behavior. Now, like I mentioned, the Democrats are all about abortion. So yesterday at Kamala Harris's rally, they brought out a whole bunch of abortionists onto the stage. The stadium went wild, of course. They all cheered for them. But something happened. Something really ironic happened. So abortionists, of course, are, I hate to even call them doctors. I hate to even call them healthcare providers because they're death doctors. That's what they are. That's the service they offer, is death, literally. So the irony of this is when they had the doctors on stage and behind them it said like reproductive freedom or reproductive rights or something like that, there was actually a medical emergency happening at the very same time within the stadium.
Necessarily becoming ill and dying. Nationwide, I think someone needs some medical assistance over here.
I mean, the irony of that can't be overstated. You have abortionists on stage as a literal medical emergency is going on. And what's really ironic is none of them, I mean, maybe one person, rushes off stage to help, but, they're all just standing there. And I think it's because they can't really help. They're used to taking away human life rather than actually helping people. So not a good look for the Harris campaign. What's also not a good look, so she got heckled a lot last night during her rally in Houston, Texas. Well, she was also in Michigan this evening, and she was heckled again. You'll notice here they're yelling, screaming about the Gaza war, and Kamala, pay attention to how she closes her notebook and where her eye line is going. A lot to analyze here in this upcoming clip.
We are fighting for America's future, and we understand the opportunity we have before us to turn the page on the fear
Again, I think it's safe to say that the season and the party of joy is officially over. It seems like every time she gives a rally now, there are hecklers and protesters. Not a good look for the Harris campaign. Obviously, all of this is coming as her campaign keeps getting more bad news in the polls and the early voting results. So when you have your own rallies just spiraling out of control, that's got to be demoralizing, not only for her as the candidate, but for everyone working on the campaign, all her staffers and all the volunteers. Now, there are a few things that really caught my attention here. First of all, we all know that Kamala Harris uses teleprompters. Usually you have a teleprompter on both sides in this situation. So it's interesting that when the heckling begins, you'll notice her close her notebook. Why does she have a notebook up there? At first, I thought maybe her canned lines were on the cover, but if you look at that, there's actually nothing on the cover. Yet her eye line, she keeps looking down at the podium multiple times. She did it once, twice. She really is looking down. Part of what I'm thinking is maybe she actually had notes underneath the binder, and maybe there were notes where she has one-liners or zingers to strike back at those hecklers. So she's like, oh, let me close my notebook and let me peek at the notes underneath them. I don't know, but there's something definitely going on here. It just doesn't make sense. I think... And I just say this, not as a professional politician, but as a professional actor. One of the things, especially for TV and film, that we're trained to do is focus on our eye line. So that's something that I am very aware of whenever I watch politicians or just anyone on TV. And so her looking down multiple times there when we know she has a teleprompter. And after she's closed the notebook, what is she looking at? If you have any theories about that, let me know in your comments down below. Now, on top of all of that, so she had the disastrous rally in Texas. She had heckling in Michigan, while Donald Trump just had a rally in Michigan, and he was actually endorsed by a whole host of Muslims. And this is huge news.
Good afternoon, Michiganders. As the president said, we just had a positive meeting with President Trump. We as Muslims stand with President Trump because he promises peace. He promises peace, not war. We are supporting Donald Trump because he promised to end war in the Middle East and Ukraine. The bloodshed has to stop all over the world, and I think this man can make that happen.
Now, for those of you who are younger, so on the back end of YouTube, we can see the analytics of our audience. We can see like the age ranges and stuff like that. It's really crazy. And for those of you who are data nerds, it's actually kind of cool. So I do know I have a lot of younger viewers, Gen Z viewers. And so a lot of y'all, most of y'all maybe actually, weren't alive for 9/11. And so I don't think for you younger viewers, you realize what a big deal this is. It's a huge deal. If you would have told me that Muslims en masse would have been endorsing a Republican candidate at all for president, let alone Donald Trump, I would have called you crazy. This is... I don't want to say unprecedented, but it kind of is. Whatever the right word is, it's just not something you would expect to see. It's just another example of how crazy this election cycle has been. And, you know, the Arab population in Michigan could really cost her the entire state. And that state alone, whether it's Michigan, Pennsylvania, any of those Rust Belt Midwestern states could really cost her the election. So, you know, Kamala getting heckled in Michigan, Trump getting endorsements from a key population voting group, huge news. And I'm seeing some polling now that suggests that Trump is polling as high as 45, maybe even up to 50% of the Arab vote in Michigan. If that holds true, I mean, we're looking at an electoral map and a voting base that we have never seen before in modern politics. Now, after Kamala had her rally in Michigan, where she was heckled, she went out for drinks with Gretchen Whitmer. And, you know, I am not a political strategist. I'm not a campaign operative, but I I don't think it's a good look when you've been accused of being an alcoholic, when there are rumors about you being drunk and high on the campaign trail. I don't think it's quite a good look to go to a bar immediately after a rough rally. Obviously super staged. You could see the boom mics earlier in the shot up above them. Cameras everywhere. Cameras behind the bar. Cameras to the left, to the right, and just all around. Nothing is organic. And I think just that right there is yet another sign of how desperate the Harris campaign is. Not just because of all the data that they have, but the drama of these protesters and these hecklers everywhere Harris goes. Just on a human level, that's got to get to you. I get that politicians sign up for this, but remember, Kamala doesn't have any experience on this because there was no primary for her. So I'm sure that these hecklers and protesters are really getting to her, getting under her skin. I'm sure it's stressing out her campaign staffers, and it's just making them more desperate. And the more desperate they get, maybe the more mistakes they're going to make. As I've said, desperate people do desperate things. And I think one of those desperate things, perhaps the most desperate thing they're doing, is calling Donald Trump Hitler, comparing him and his followers to the Nazis. And it's just really unbecoming of someone running for the highest office in the land, because that's a serious accusation. It's sort of like the boy who cried wolf. If you keep saying Nazi, 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 once there's an actual threat of a fascist and a dictator, once there's an actual threat of a mass murderer, hopefully it never gets to that point, people aren't going to take you seriously. That is only something you use like when you're for real. Like you never be the boy who cries wolf. It's just not right. And I think the Trump campaign has been brilliant in striking back against the new lows and the new blows that the Democrat Party is doing. So they actually found a survivor from Auschwitz who was willing to sit down and talk about this. And by the way, he voted for Trump. He's endorsing Trump, and he has a lot of very pointed words for Kamala Harris. And the Trump campaign actually turned this into a campaign ad.
My name is Jerry Wartsky. I'm 94 years old and survivor of Auschwitz and the death marches. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland when I was 9 years old. He murdered my parents and most of our family. I know more about Hitler than Kamala will ever know in 1,000 lifetimes. For her to accuse President Trump of being like Hitler is the worst thing I've ever heard in my 75 years living in the United States. I know President Trump, and he would never say this, and Kamala Harris knows this. She owes my parents and everybody else who was murdered by Hitler an apology for repeating this lie.
Why should the Jewish people support President Trump?
Because he's a mensch. I believe that President Trump is definitely going to be good for Israel, because in everything that he's done up to now was in favor. He never double-crossed anyone, and he never showed any weakness. Watching President Trump pray for the hostages at the OL and getting to spend time with him so meaningful. He has always stood with the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
A brilliant ad, if you ask me. I just absolutely love that. And not only, as I was saying earlier, not only is it wrong to be the boy who cried wolf, to also do that diminishes the millions of lives that were lost. I mean, I get some people view politics as a spectator sport or even as a game, but we're talking about people's lives. Their very existence, their very being. That's not something you talk about or joke about lightly. And so to accuse someone so flippantly of being Hitler for your own political gain, people want to talk about Trump's character. I think if you do that, it says a lot about your character, quite frankly. I think it shows a lot about your lack of judgment, your lack of perspective in the grand scheme of things, and your judgment. I just I don't think that one issue alone disqualifies Kamala Harris. But I think it says a lot about her character than a lot of leftists and Democrats are leading you to believe. But as always, all of that is just my commentary. All of that is just my analysis. That's what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view. And I would love to hear from you. What do you think about all of this? Specifically, the last 24 hours, have been bad for Kamala Harris. I mean, the hecklers at her rallies, both in Houston and now in Michigan. But specifically, going back to the original topic of the video, that lady screaming at the baby. I mean, is there any, seriously, I don't mean this to be an easily slam dunk. I'm just curious, just as a thinking exercise, legitimately. Is there any situation where that would be acceptable? Because I've thought long and hard about this, and I just can't think of any. I really cannot think of any. And so for her to do that, I think says a lot about the current state of the Democrat Party. The fact that only one person in that entire crowd stood up to defend not just the child, but the child's father, by the way, who is on his own. I mean, outnumbered. If the rest of the crowd was like that lady yelling at the baby, that could have been a very dangerous situation. Truly. What do you think about it? About what it says about our culture, or the culture of the Democrat Party? I'd be interested to know what you think. I just can't see any excuse for that. Now, one last thing before I go. I struggled about whether or not I was going to say this, but I'm going to say it just because I have to go with my conscience. But I've never deleted comments on my channel, ever. And I don't plan to unless I make exceptions. And in that case, I will share them with you in the video. But there are people who believe, they haven't confirmed, they believe they have identified the lady in the video. Please do not post her name in the comments of my video. I get it's a public platform, but as long as this is my channel, I need to tell you why, and why I need to stick to that conviction. And if I do see you share her name, I will delete it, because it has not been confirmed. This is all just social media speculation. There has been no legitimate publication that has confirmed her identity. It's been suspected, not confirmed, that the lady in the video is a specific Democrat strategist, or works for the Democrat Party. And people have been sharing her name and essentially doxing her online. But if those people are wrong, you could have potentially ruined someone's life who's innocent, put an innocent person in danger physically. And so unless there's confirmation, I just don't want that kind of information out there. Again, like I said earlier, I get people view politics as a spectator sport, especially in the age of social media, but we are talking about actual lives here. So, if it comes out that this person has been identified and it's a newsworthy topic, okay, yes, I'll let those comments slide, but until this has been verified, if I see that comment, I'm going to delete it. And it's not because I don't want the truth. It's not because anything like that. It's just out of an abundance of caution. I just don't want to risk putting anyone innocent in danger. It's just my conscience won't let me deal with that, won't let me live with that. And so I want to be honest with y'all, because I've said multiple times, I've said it in the comments, that I don't delete comments. But in this one case, I will. And that's, I get some people are going to be upset, especially because of free speech, but that's just something I have to do. As always, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. Oh, I'm getting really tongue-tied here. I think I was just too much in my head. But if you haven't already, please feel free to give me a thumbs. I'm not laughing. Serious topics. But who doesn't get tongue-tied? If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask, but it really does help me to reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe. It's late, y'all. I just came back from the lake. It was a great day, by the way. And my dog, I almost said his name. He had a great time at the lake. If you watched my last video, yes, that was him barking. There wasn't a dog at Tim Walz's rally, like some of you were asking in the comments. He had a great day, and as you can see, he is pooped out. Okay, if you haven't already, please, don't wake up, baby. Oh no, I woke him up. I might as well not whisper anymore. But maybe I can't get to go back to sleep. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Once I reach 100,000 viewers, I'm gonna do a pet reveal with him and the kitty, tell you their adoption stories, and I promise I have some cute videos I already know I want to share. Smash that subscribe button and check out one of these videos.